In this video, I'm going to make a custom leaderboard. You can see it right here. It's not the default Roblox leaderboard. And I'm going to save this data off in between my games, so I always know what my high score is, my personal best. This score, of course, resets every time I die, just like in Flappy Birds. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. I'm not going to get the highest score because I could barely get 10, right? So you get the idea. Let's try it one more time though. Let's get like one more point, because I'm actually going to set up a real simple track that has all the same game mechanics, so it's going to be easier to follow along with. Let's go ahead and get started with our custom leaderboard that saves data. I got an empty base plate right here. I'm going to set up a simplified track to work on my custom leaderboard, and that way I can move it into whatever game I want. So let me go over to the workspace, and we'll spend a little bit of time setting up a simple track. We have our base plate here. I'm going to make it real thin, and I want to run down the Z axes. So I'm going to make the X 20. So it'll be 2016 by 2048. And we're not going to get it moving because that requires a lot of mechanics to go beyond the scope of our custom leaderboard. All right, now, which way do we want to go for Z? I think we should go this way. That way, when we get into the world, we're going to be facing our correct direction. I want 3 obstacles that can kill me or hurt me in some way. So that part there is going to be an obstacle. Let's go ahead and click on that part, and we'll change it to obstacle. Right. Let's spread it across, like maybe a little jump or something. So for size, I'll make it 20 across, so you got to jump it. And then just maybe 2 high and 2 on the Y and 2 on the Z, because I don't want to be fumbling around with it when I'm working on the video. Let's go ahead and hit collisions. Make sure collisions is on. We'll just bump it into the ground, and we'll just move it in place. It's about right. Cool. Probably not perfect. Let's go to our plus. We'll add a script, and then we'll just do the damage script here. I'll make it simple. Damage. And we'll go and get rid of this, right? Print. We don't need a print statement. Let's do local. How about part equals script dot parent. Let's go ahead and make a variable for the player service. I'll say local players equals game get service players, and I'm going to get my part. I'm going to get the touched event. When that fires, I'm going to connect that to an anonymous function. There we go. Other part is going to get passed into that function. So it's going to look just like that. And let's check to see if it's a player that touched that part. So I'm going to get a variable for player, and then I'm going to say players. That's the player service. In the player service, we have a method called get player from character. Remember, that's a colon. And what we need to do is get the other part. We're hoping it's a foot or something like that. We'll get the parent, because if it is a foot, the parent's going to be the character. Oh, and then we'll have a player. So if player is returned from that, then we can go ahead and say, oh, it's a player. We'll get the humanoid from the player, right? We're actually going to get it from the other part there. The other part, parent, is the character. And we'll do a wait for child. We'll get the humanoid, right? It's kind of a little bit tricky. And what are we going to do? Well, when we get the humanoid, let's just do take damage. Take damage, right? And I'm not going to do a debounce because I'm just going to kill him off. Boom, it's gone. Now, if we go ahead and play this, hit the play button. We should be looking down Roblox. Ah, yeah, there we go. And that should kill us. Boom, cool. Now we need to have something that we collect, some sort of reward, like a coin or something like that. Or you can make it invisible, like in Flappy Bird, it's an invisible barrier, and when you hit it, you get your point. You go right through it. We have can collide off. Let's just make 2 more of these obstacles. Make sure can collide is off, and then I'll do a Control D to duplicate in place. We'll just drag it out. Control D. Let's put 3 of them, right? And you can do as many as you want. Now we need some sort of coin or reward so that we jump up, we get it. Flappy Birds, it was invisible, but I think I'm going to make this one visible. This is going to be, we can call it goal, right? That's our goal. And I'm going to make that, how about 2 by 2 by 2? 2 by 2 by 2 in size, right? We're going to move it up, center it maybe. Let's go to position. There's our position. I'm going to make it, how about on the Y, I'll make it like 5.5. And then on the Z, Let's make that 0. There, that's centered. I'm going to keep it the same on the X because I just drug it in place, because these boundaries here aren't actually set to any specific spacing. On the goal part, don't forget we got to anchor it so it doesn't fall down. Let's go down here, anchored. Boom, it's going to stay in space. And then I'm going to turn can collide off so that when we hit it, it doesn't stop us and then we fall on our obstacle. We don't want that. On the goal itself, let's hit the plus, and then we'll hit the script. And then we'll call that something like, I don't know, pick up or score. How about score? That's good. Get rid of the print statement. And, oh, you know what? I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to get that damage. There's a damage script. We got like 3 of them now, right? I must have highlighted it. Go ahead and Control C. Copy that whole thing. Control V. Oh, it looks really, really close. The only thing we're going to do in here, let's just put a print statement for now. We'll say print. And then I'll do like a plus 10 points, right? And then when we hit that part, we are going to destroy it. Part, destroy. Let's go ahead and try this out. And I think what I'm going to do is make this a little bit higher. I don't know if I'm going to be able to jump and catch that. Let's go to our position. I'll do it under C frame there. How about we make this like 7.5 instead of 5.5? And let's play it. So we got, there's our part. Oh, we got it. What does it say under view output? Ah, plus 10 points. Cool. That will work. That will work. I just need to get a little more skilled. All right, I'm going to close my output window so we have a little more room. And I'm going to make 3 of these total. Control D. Just move it on out here. Is that about right? And Control D. I could look to see where they are on the Z axes, right? That'll work. But close enough for the video. And if you don't really need shadows in your game, I highly recommend selecting all your parts and then turn cast shadows off, right? So there's cast shadow, boom. If you need it for like effect or whatever, like you're doing a horror game, you're going to need the shadows. But otherwise, it just burns up a lot of resources in your game, and we don't need it for our Flappy Bird or our runner, infinite runner. And we need some mechanism to store our points when we collect them. So let's go to our server script service, hit the plus, add a regular script, right? Not a local or a module, a script. And I normally call this game manager. In the Flappy Bird, I called it running manager. So if you're like converting this over to your Flappy Bird game, running manager is what I called it, I believe. And just like you would do a leaderboard, we're going to do a function, local function, add player data. Player is going to get passed in player. And we're going to get, how about a variable for player data? I think I'm just going to make everything lowercase here so I don't get confused. And then we'll do instance.new. Folder has to be uppercase because you have to actually call it the folder, right? You have to get an instance of the folder. And then the player is going to be the parent for our player data. So we're putting a folder on the player, but not a leader stat folder, right? It's going to be separate. It's going to be different. So we'll get our player data and then name. This is where you'd normally call it leader stats if you're using a leaderboard. Just call it player data. We're going to get, how about high score? Just like in the demo, high score and score. So high score, you're going to persist between games and between death and rebirth, right? And then score is going to be reset every time. So we'll do local. How about high score equals instance new. This is going to be an int value, like an integer, 1, 2, 3, 4, stuff like that. And then the parent is going to be the player data. We'll give that a name. High score.name. Now, if this was the leader stats, this would be the part that you would see on the leaderboard. But we are not going to see that because it's a custom leaderboard. So I'm going to keep that lowercase, right? Because it gets confusing. You can't remember if you're uppercase, lowercase, whatever. Oh, and let's do the score. The score is going to be almost identical. Just copy this. Control C, Control V. Get rid of high. It's still going to be an int value. We'll get rid of high for high score.name. And then right here, just score. We got to add that to the player when the player enters the game. So get game players, that's the player service. The player added event fires when somebody joins the game. We're going to connect that to an anonymous function. I spelled it wrong. And the player is going to be the argument. Then just get your add player data and call that. We're also going to do our data store stuff in here too. So that's why I didn't just stick add player data here, right? In case you guys were wondering. Let's play and we're going to check to see if it's adding to the player. Now we're not going to have a leaderboard down here. We have to go to the player service and there's the folder we added, player data. And in player data, we're going to have high score and score, right? They're not hooked up to our parts yet though. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and stop this and go back to, well, let's take a look at Running Manager real quick. So on our players, we are going to have a player data, right? That's the name. And then it'll be, so player.player data dot, what is it? High score and player.player data dot score. Let's go to our goal. Oh, look at that. We got 3 of them. We are going to delete, let's delete 2 of them right now because we don't want to be updating 3 sets of scripts, right? Let's just wait till we're done and then we'll make those goals again. The obstacles are good. You can leave them like that. So let's open up our score of the 1 goal that still remains. We're going to get rid of our print statement. We don't really need it. And then we're going to have our score. So we'll say player dot, remember player data. It's not going to help you out until you type it at least once. Player data dot score. So you have that. And you're also going to have your high score too, right? I'll just copy that. Control C, Control V, and that's going to be high score. Right? And then this one's high score. High score and high score. All right. And then we got to actually score them, right? So let's get the score. And then we'll do dot value plus equals 10 because it's an int value. If the score happens to have surpassed the high score, we need to update that. So we'll say if score, there it is, dot value is greater than high score dot value, then the high score dot value is now going to equal the score dot value. There we go. Update that. Let's go ahead and try it out. We're going to hit the play. All right. So there we go. And I'm going to jump up and get that block. Oh, good. I didn't die. Let's go to our workspace players. There's our player, Simtech Gamer 7. There's the player data. High score, up, value 10. Score, value 10. So it seems to be working. Let's just go ahead and get a couple of these goals. Control D, as long as collisions are off. Control D, duplicate in place. Let's pull it out here. You might want to line it up. I'm not going to because of the video. Maybe a little bit, right? And then Control D. That'll be good enough for what we're doing right now. We should probably color them though, so because even in the video, it's kind of hard to see them. Let's do goal, 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 and then you can make it whatever color you want. I don't know, make it like a yellow. How about the obstacles too? Sweet, that's pretty good. Now we got to make our graphical user interface, our little scoreboard, or GUI as I like to call it. Let's go down to starter GUI. There we go. We're going to hit that plus. Screen GUI. Hit the plus again, and then let's add a frame. There's the frame right over there. Let's call the frame score frame. Oh, I thought I had it there. There we go. Score frame. Right. And then on the score frame, we are going to add a text label. The text label, let's start that out with, how about high score? Yeah, with the high score on the top. Let's go high score, and I'll do LBL for label. And we got to change it around a little bit. We got to move this stuff too, right? It's up here in the corner. I think I'm going to move it in the center. And I don't want the borders, the insets. So let's go to our screen GUI. And then I'm going to say ignore inset. And that's going to move my score up a little bit higher when I start to play. And then for the score frame, let's go ahead and change that anchor point. I'm going to center that. So I'm going to make the anchor point 0.5 and 0 on the score frame. See, it shifted it to the left because the anchor point is in the middle of it instead of the left upper right, which it normally is. There, go down here. We got position it. What are we going to do for position? How about a 0.5 on the X? So it's in the middle of the screen. 0 pixel offset. And we'll do maybe 0.01 Y. So it just bumps it down a little on the Y. Watch what happens there. And then 0 pixel offset. Boom. That's pretty good. Size. Let's change the size a little bit. I think I'll make it a 0.2 scale for the X, 0 pixel offset, 0.2 for the Y, and 0 pixel offset for the Y. Nice. And we can make it invisible. You want to make it invisible? Let's do that. Go up to the top on the score frame, just start scrolling down. How about background transparency 1? Cool. You can still see the outline. Right now, I want that label to stretch all the way across. So now we'll go down to our high score label, and we will make that background transparency 0 or 1, but not quite yet because we want to work on it a little bit. Position is good. Size, we want to change that. How about make it 1 on the X, so it goes all the way across the frame, the score frame. 0 pixel offset, 0.5 because we want it to go down halfway, and 0 pixel offset. Nice. And let's scroll down a little more. I think I'm going to change the font face to B. Bangers. I know my computer's really, really slow, but that's all right because I'm getting a new one on Wednesday, and then it's going to be super fast. All right, here we go. Label. Let's just call that high score. We'll set it to 0. Now we're going to set this with code, so it doesn't really matter, but we want to see what it looks like. Right? And now we're going to make it text scaled so it's a little bigger. Or you could actually just set the text size, but you have to turn off text scaled for that. I'm not going to bother with the coloring, right? Now we can make this invisible, the background invisible. Let's go ahead and duplicate it first though. We got it. Once you get it the way you want it, let's do a Control D to duplicate it. And this one's going to be the score label, but we got to move it down underneath the high score. On the score label, let's look at the position. There we go, position. And on the Y, let's make it 0.5 on the Y right there, right? 0.5. Boom, moves it down. Oh, now we got also have to change the text. There, instead of high score, score on the text. Nice. Let's make the background of both of these invisible. So I'm going to just select both. I'm going to go up to the top and then scroll down a little till I see background transparency 1. Boom. All right. And feel free to change the colors of these fonts however you want. Let's also get a sound. Might as well, right? So go to Home, Toolbox, and I'll click that Creator Store. Let's do audio. And maybe a pickup sound. I'm always afraid to click these on the video. That's not bad. There we go. That's the one, right? So I think I'm going to put that on the score frame. So get this score frame. We're going to play this client side. There we go. Pickup, collect. I'll just call it pickup. Pickup. Close this. We need to start working on our script. So go to score frame, hit the plus, and this is going to be a local script, right? And we'll call this something like pickup manager or something. Or I don't know. How about just score loc? Score loc. That'll work. Now the funny thing about this is I'm not going to use a remote event. I am going to use the on change event or the changed event that's on our player data, and you'll see what I mean. I typically use remote events. I think they're better, but this is going to be a lot less code, a lot less complexity. Let's get our sound first. Let's do script.parent, and then we'll do wait for child. There's our pickup. Probably should call it pickup sound. We're going to need our score label. score LBL, right? That's also script dot parent, wait for child, score label. We're going to need our high score label, high score LBL, script dot parent, colon, wait for child, high score label. Cool. Oh, let's get our player service. Players, game, get service, players, and we're going to get the player data from our players. Oh, so we'll need a player. Let's get the local player. The local player we'll get from the player service, players dot local player. You can only do that on local scripts. You can't do that on server script. What else? Ooh, player data now. So we'll get our player data, right? That little folder that we saw that had the high score and the score. We'll get that from the player, wait for child, player data. Now we'll get the score and the high score from the player data, right? So we'll do local score. This is the score value, not the score label. That's why I call those others label. High score label and score label. This is actually going to be the score that's on the player data. So we'll do our player data dot score. Could do a wait for child. I think I'll just do it like that. I think it'll be fine. And then we'll do a high score. Will be player data dot high score. You know what? Let's just be safe. Wait for child. And I made it all lowercase. High score. This is going to be wait for child too. Let's just do it here. Colon, wait for child. Score. All right. Hopefully that doesn't cause any errors. Now let's initialize the text when they start. It's only going to be 0, 0 right now because we don't have our data store. But on our high score label, the text, we will do high score space. This is a string concatenator. So we're going to take the high score and now we're going to get the high score from the player data, right? And it's going to make this a text because it's going to say, oh, that's a number, that's an int value. But because we're concatenating it to this string right here, the whole thing is going to be a string, right? Oh, you know what? We might as well just copy this because we need the same thing for the score. Control C, Control V. Let's get rid of high. And then we'll go here, get rid of that high. Oh, I missed this one. Wait. It should be 0, 0. You might want to play it. Make sure there's no errors. Let's go ahead and do that. Hit the play. View. Output. Now, there's no errors. That's good. This is the player data that we're working with right here, right? So we have our high score and our score. There's zeros now. We don't have our data store set up. All right, nice, nice. Go ahead and turn this off. We'll get rid of that window. We'll go back to our score loc. Now these int values right here, the score and the high score are going to fire events when they change. So we could take our score, you could do this in either order, changed, connect that to function value. You can pick up the events and display stuff from here in a local script, but don't change it here, right? Like if you have to update something, don't change it locally. You should change that server side because people can exploit. And I don't even think Roblox will let you. It'll update on your character, but the other people in the game won't see it updating. At least that's the way it should be. That's the way it used to be, right? So we'll have our score label now, and then we will update the text when that changes, right? It's going to change server side, but we will be able to see it. We'll be able to see it player side or client side. All right, then we'll get our sound. Do we have a sound yet? Oh yeah, that one. Sound, and then we'll just play it, right? Play. Sweet. And then our high score is going to be almost identical, right? Copy that, Control C, Control V. This is going to be high score. High score. High score label. That, oh, it adds that extra text. High score. And we don't need to play that. I think we're good. Let's try it. There we go. And let's get that. Boom. Sweet. All right. Let's check our errors. No errors. What happens if we die? Reset character. Boom. We have both scores. We want to reset this one, maintain this one. Now, if we leave the game and come back, they're both going to be 0 because we don't have our data store set up. But we're going to do that real soon. Let's turn off our game. And then I'm going to go to the running manager. Remember, that is in server script service if you lost it. We're going to zero out our score when we die and then re-enter the game. So under add player data, let's get the player dot character added event, connect that to an anonymous function. The character will get passed in, I'll call it char, and then we'll get our player dot player data dot score dot value and equal it to 0. So the score is going to reset when we rejoin the game. We're also going to have our data store stuff. Since we're here, let's go ahead and say get top score. That's going to be from the data store. It's going to be red right now because we didn't define it yet. See that little red line underneath? That's all right. We're going to handle that in a second. But I also want to get the humanoid, and that's on the char. We'll do a wait for child, humanoid, and then the hum.died event, we are going to connect that to a function. No arguments will get passed in. This is where we're going to save our top score, right? So when we die, we'll save it. Save top score. That's also going to be red. We're going to handle that in a second. Let's go ahead and add some stub functions here. Just define it so we get rid of that red, that ugly, scary red. Local function get top score. And then we're going to have the other one for local function save top score. Nice. We can't use the data store yet. You know what we got to do? We got to go to home. Make sure you save your game off. You'll have that option here. So if you haven't saved it yet, it'll say you have to save the game. Then when you do that, go to security, enable studio access to API services. Boom. Now you can talk to the data store. Save it. Sweet. Let's go to the top of this script, and we're going to need 2 variables. We're going to need a DSS. That is my convention for the data store service. So I'll say game get service, data store service, and then local DS is my convention for the data store. DSS, get data store, right? So you need the data store service to get the data store. And then let's call this, how about top scores or high scores, whatever. Now let's populate or implement our get top score function and our save top score. And what I'm noticing is we should have a player get passed into both of these. I was a little sloppy there. So let's make sure we do have a player on the get top score. Ooh, I missed it for this, right? There we go, player. We are going to pass this player right here, right? Player. It's going to come through, and we are going to get our top score data from our data store right here. I'm going to be a little more cautious on this. So I'm going to make the code a little more solid than I normally do. I normally just do a get async. But let's get how about a table for the data that we have saved off, if we've saved off data. We'll do a local success, comma, and then MSG for message from a P call. We'll do function, open and close parentheses. We are going to see if we can populate the table data with the data store. How about get async player dot user data. We're going to use user ID. We're going to use the user ID as a key for each player. If we successfully get this, like there's no problems with the HTTP call, the call itself, this will be a success. We could have a successful call and still have empty data, right? It might be the first time they're playing. So we're going to have to look at both of those things that can happen. Let's go down a little bit. let's check to see if not success. Like maybe you forgot to turn on API services for data stores, right? We'll go ahead and capture that event, but also you can not have a success if the internet, if there's something wrong with the internet or the connection. You don't want people going into the game and then messing up their data store if it wasn't working right. So I am going to kick the player if there was a problem with the data store. Better that than destroy all their data, and then they could just try again, try to get in the game again. So I'm going to tell them data storage problem. That way you don't kick them and they're like, what happened? Try again. All right, that's pretty safe. That's pretty safe. Now, the other thing we have to check for is perhaps this was successful and there is no data, right? It might be the first time they're playing. So let's check to see if there's data before we do any updating on the player data. So if data, then we can get the player.player data, player, I knew that didn't look right, data, and then we're going to have our high score. That's going to be an int value, so don't forget the dot value. Our data is also going to have something called high score, and we're not going to do value there. That's not going to be an int value. It's just going to be a number, right? That's just the way our table is going to work. But don't forget that value. That should work pretty well. Let's go down to our save top score, right? When they leave, then we need to reverse the process. We're going to get a table for data, right? We're going to get this value to store off, Control C, Control V. That will be equal to this value, right? We're just reversing it. We're shaving things off for when we leave. I'm not going to do the protected call because leaving isn't as dangerous as entering the game. If you enter the game and there's a problem with the data store and it's zeroed out, you could wipe out like thousands of high score attempts, right? Your best score ever. The worst thing that's going to happen is if it fails when you're leaving, you're not going to get that high score, which still could be bad, but there's much less you can do about it. And I think the damage is less too, right? So we'll do, and don't forget, we're going to be saving every time we die also. So you're going to have a lot of attempts to save it. All right, so we'll set async. We're going to save that data off. It should have our high score right here. We do this every time we die, but we also want to do it when we're leaving the game. Let's go down to the bottom, game, players, and then we have the player removing, right? Like if you're leaving the map or leaving the experience, this is going to fire. Oh, let's not put the function in here. Let's just call this directly. Let's do save top score, but get rid of those two parentheses because the player removing already knows to make one of the parameters the player, right? That should work. Let's go ahead and try this out. We'll hit the play. And then let's go to view output. And I don't see any errors. Something kind of flashed there for a second. All right. What happens if we die? Let's try that. If we die, reset character. Cool. This should reset. Score should reset. Good. High score should not reset. What happens if we leave the game? And then play it again. I don't see any errors. That's good. This is usually where you find out, right? Playing it. Boom. Oh, 10. We got it. Cool. Let's do another one. What happens if we die here? Right. So that should be a 0. That should be a 20. We leave the game. Now we're going to come back. We should have a high score of 20. Nice. All right. I will see you in the next video. You got a nice little data store going, a savable custom leaderboard. Oh man, bummer.